Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to the Progressive Parent YouTube channel. I'm very pleased to be here this morning with Amanda Burleigh. She's an NHS midwife of 28 years, a general nurse, mother of two, and since 2005 she's been campaigning for lengthening the time in between children being born and the umbilical cord being clamped. Hi Amanda, how are you?
Hi Anthony, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk.
It's a pleasure to have you. Would you like to just start by telling us a little bit about your own background?
Oh, my own background. I trained as a general nurse a long time ago in 1984, qualified in 87, and then became a midwife quite soon afterwards. And I've been a midwife for 28 years, which means I've got a really good general knowledge of most things about to do with midwifery, and it's a job that I love very, very much indeed. Since 2005 is when I recognised that I was trained in 1988, and when we were trained as midwives, we were trained that when babies were born, we clamped and cut the cord immediately. And I did that for 16 years, I regret to say. But then, reflecting on our practice in 2005, I realised that there was absolutely no evidence to back up the practice of immediate cord clamping, and I began then to campaign for evidence-based practice, which was to not clamp the cord immediately, and it's been a very interesting journey over the last 11 years.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, according to my research in the preparation for this interview, the Royal College of Midwives changed their guidance in 2012 to say that delaying the cutting of the cord was the best practice. And then, now after 10 years, the National Institute for Healthcare and Excellence has also changed its guidelines and states that doctors and midwives shouldn't routinely clamp the cord earlier than 1 minute from the birth of the baby, and instead should wait 1 to 5 minutes, and longer if the mother requests it.
Yeah, well, in 2005, when I recognised that we were clamping the cord and we had no evidence to back it up, all the national and international guidelines were recommending immediate cord clamping, and the first guidelines to change were the World Health Organization in 2007. That they changed their guidance to recommend at least 1 minute, particularly in areas of endemic anemia, because clamping the cord immediately deprives the baby of up to 30% of its blood volume, which of course is very important in all babies, but particularly when there's endemic anemia. Then after 2007, 2009, the Royal College of Gynecologists and Obstetricians changed their guidance to recommend at least 1 minute. Then, like you say, followed by the Royal College of Midwives in 2012, which didn't give a timing, but they also recommended at the same time that midwives should be competent in both active management of the third stage and physiological third stage management of the third stage, which is really important, because I was brought up in a time when 99.9% of women had active management of the third stage, and I've realised over time that active management is an intervention, and all interventions carry some form of risk, and that we should be moving towards holistic care for each woman. Obviously active management is very, very important in a lot of cases, but in other cases, when you've had a normal labour and delivery, do we really need to be intervening by giving a woman an oxytocin drug, which has side effects, and shortening the third stage of labour? So the Royal College of Midwives were actually very, very important. Their guidelines were very, very important and covered two aspects of the third stage of labour rather than just delayed cord clamping. And I was very, very pleased with that, with the guideline in retrospect. Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say you must be, because that sounds like a great victory for you.
It is a nice took a lot of persuading, actually, and in 2011, I wrote to them and had communications with NICE to change their guidance, because of course NICE people do follow the NICE guidelines, and most people, even though we are autonomous practitioners, need permission to by way of guidelines, but NICE actually wouldn't bring forward their publication date of 2014, so I set up a petition which gained 5,500 signatures from 44 different countries, because this is not just a national problem, it's an international problem, and immediate cord clamping is happening all over the globe, and it's something that I'm very actively involved with other midwives and practitioners, doctors, parents across the world in trying to change practice there as well, because I feel that it's so important.
What was your first inclination that midwives and doctors should be waiting before clamping the umbilical cord?
My first inclination was in 2005. We had a little discussion before, but I have 2 children with needs, which isn't anything to do with immediate cord clamping. But it did put me in touch with teachers of special needs children, and they highlighted the fact that a lot of them were worried about the incidence of children having problems, and not just learning difficulties, but behavioural difficulties, the increase in allergies, the increase in asthma, and I'd observed this with my friends as well, friends outside work and inside work, and in work we had 6 job shares who had 14 children. 8 of them were boys and 6 had learning problems. And outside work, it was very evident to me that quite a number of my friends had boys that had developmental difficulties. And that set up, I have quite a forensic mind, and I started looking informally at different aspects that maybe having an impact on our children. And that included looking at incidences of people ingesting caffeine in pregnancy, or sugar, people smoking, drinking, wacky-backy, all sorts of things. And then it was like looking for a needle in a haystack, and then looking for this needle in a haystack, I suddenly had this revelation that actually what we were doing in our practice wasn't evidence-based. We were doing it because we'd been taught that's the way we should do it, but there not been really any thought in it. Immediate cord clamping came in 15, 60 years ago because of the advent of an oxytocin drug, which was very, very important in reducing the mortality rate of women dying of postpartum hemorrhages. And it's an injection of a hormone which is given immediately after the baby's born, or some cases, well, we were advised initially to give when the baby's first shoulder was born, and it reduces the chance of PPH, which of course it did. But along with that, it was interpreted that the cord was cut immediately, and the problem there lies that nobody had actually thought about the effect on the baby of immediate cord clamping, and there was absolutely no evidence, and there still is today no evidence to support immediately cutting a baby's umbilical cord as soon as the baby's born.
Well, let's talk about what evidence there is that one perhaps ought not to do that. What are the costs of clamping the umbilical cord early, and what are the benefits of waiting?
I think that there's a lot of research underway at the moment, but the first people that I came across were George Morley in America, who'd done some research, which can be found easily on the internet, and it's in the article that was published in the Telegraph. And he was absolutely adamant that the immediate cord clamping had caused the rise in autism in children. There's been no evidence since then to say that this is right, but Ulla Anderson in 2011 did a research that showed that babies that had immediate cord clamping are far more likely to be anemic, and anemia in babies impacts on their neurological development and behavioural problems. His follow-up a year later showed that these babies that had the anemia had rectified the anemia, but the same follow-up in children at 4 years of age shows that the children that had immediate cord clamping, particularly boys, which is what I suspected all along, have decreased fine motor skills and behavioural difficulties. Ulla he's instrumental in the research that's been done, and he's actually undergoing research in different countries at this moment, so it's sort of watch this space really. Judith Mercer is a midwife in America who is my heroine really, and she'd done a lot of research early 2000s because she actually realised, she's the same, she realised as a midwife that immediate cord clamping was wrong, but she worked in America in a very medicalised model of midwifery and obstetricians, and she realised that she wasn't going to be able to change practice unless she went the academic route, and she became a professor, and her research is absolutely fantastic, particularly in premature babies, that show that the impact of immediate cord clamping on premature babies is much graver than it is on other babies, and the benefits of delayed cord clamping on premature babies are really, really important. Yeah.
Right, and even if that anemia rectifies itself in 4 years. The first 4 years of life are absolutely formative,
Yeah.
and we have no idea what spending your first 4 years being anemic will actually do to you, even if on the biological level you recover from that.
Yeah.
It may leave other wounds. I also noticed that a study found that when the cord wasn't clamped immediately, babies gained up to 214 grams in weight.
They do, yeah.
And
And
go on, please.
No, I was going to say that's Diane Farrow. Diane Farrow did her research. She's from Bradford, and her team did they weighed the babies. They left the cord intact for 5 minutes, and babies gained up to 214 grams. And when I'm giving parents informed choice, the research that I quote is Ulla Anderson's, which was the anemic one, because obviously the 4 years haven't gone by, and Diane Farrow's research that was done in 2010. And parents will quickly grasp that immediate cord clamping is not a good idea, and that delaying the cord clamping, especially when there's absolutely no reason to clamp it immediately, is extremely important. And they were the people that began. So they were the parents were the educated parents that were given it informed choice, were the ones that started to change, that really make an impact on changing practice. Go on.
Lovely. And on that point, you wanted to talk about cord blood donation and that's links to informed choice and how important that is. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
I think the thing about informed choice is absolutely huge, because we have actually been doing an intervention which deprives the baby of up to 30% of its blood without informing the parents, and I'll lead on to that bit in a minute. But even NICE, when I had communications with them, one of the reasons that they wouldn't bring their guidance forwards or changing guidance was because they said that all parents get informed choice. Well, unfortunately, that is not the case, and hasn't been. The last year has been better, because obviously NICE now recommend a delay of at least 1 minute, and practice is changing, but that can't be guaranteed. There's a lot of big units that are still doing immediate cord clamping and haven't thought about changing practice. The thing I would say about the cord donation, which I think is really quite important, is that parents are given information that they can donate their baby's umbilical cord club, and they are told that it's a waste product. In the past, when we used to do this and we had no awareness of what we were doing, it was a waste product. It shouldn't have been a waste product, but it was ended up in the bin rather than in the baby. And this is sometimes still exploited, that this cord blood is a waste product. If the cord blood is in the baby, it's not a waste product. But cord blood donation companies are very keen to get their hands on this blood, and they say that they quite often they're not giving parents informed choice. And I know I get communications through people, because I do have a website, a Facebook page called Optimal Cord Clamping Full Blood Benefit, and we get people writing in saying that they've been, or midwives writing in to say that the women are given really good information about donating their baby's blood, but they're not told about delayed cord clamping. And what they think they're doing is signing up to save people's lives by giving away a donation with this waste product, when it's actually not a waste product. It should be in the baby. You can do a delayed cord clamping for 1 minute, and some companies will actually allow optimal cord clamping where the cord stops pulsating, which is the ideal. I have to say, we're starting a new campaign called Wait for White, where the cord has finished pulsating and the cord is white and empty. And there are some companies that will take the placenta and take the stem cells from that, and other companies will allow the baby to have 1 minute or more, and then they will they'll clamp and put and take the donation. But some companies say, well, they advertise as the biggest sample is the best. And what I am concerned about is that parents aren't getting proper informed choice, because you can do both, but they're not getting informed choice, and the bigger sample is the best really, really worries me, because that bigger sample is the bigger sample that's been taken from the babies.
Yes.
So informed choice in both, because you can do both, is extremely important, but there's a lot of parents signing up to this without knowing about the what they're actually doing. They're not getting proper informed choice.
Yes, I mean, what you say makes so much sense to me. I mean, nature isn't stupid. It's not silly.
No.
If the umbilical cord is pulsing, then it looks to me like that has a biological function. I mean, it's trying to pour blood into the baby. And even when I heard about your work, I saw the article in the Telegraph where you were interviewed, which I'll link to in the description of this show. I thought, well, I've always sort of thought that you should wait a while before clamping the umbilical cord. I mean, a baby's sensitive, and it's already just had the shock of leaving the safety of its mother's womb to appear, in a bright environment. And I thought, it wouldn't need another shock right away.
Mm-hmm.
And just to take a little bit more care in the early stages, because a newborn child is so sensitive. So the thing about the pulsing is it looks like a hopeful sign, because people will actually be able to measure whether the baby's ready to have its umbilical cord cut or not by the signals that, nature is intended to give it, which is to watch for the correct signs.
Yes, agree completely. Yeah.
Great.
The first minute, the first hour of a baby's life are really, really important. The best start for a baby is obviously optimal cord clamping, where the cord stops pulsating, skin to skin, and breastfeeding, or a feeding of mother's choice. But if you can get the delayed cord, the optimal cord clamping, the baby's got that best start, and you can never take that back. And there's so many benefits to delayed cord, optimal cord clamping. The baby gets 30%, at least 30% of its more circulating blood. Well, it's not 30% more. It's actually the baby's blood. The baby gets its full intended blood volume from the cord and placenta. They have a decreased risk of anemia, and increased iron stores. They have increased stem cells. I think Judith Mercer says that there's about 1 billion extra stem cells, and of course, stem cells are the building blocks for an adult's life. And these stem cells are important all the way through the baby's life. It does also concern me that we're actually on second generation cord clamping, that we're clamping and cutting the cords of babies whose parents had their cords clamped and cut. And, is there possibly an accumulative effect over the generations? What are we actually doing globally? The baby gets more oxygen to vital organs. There's some new research to say that a baby that has optimal cord clamping actually responds better to its mother's voice, and that's to do with the level of iron.
Wow.
Preterm infants, they have decreased intraventricular hemorrhage, decreased necrotizing enterocolitis, decreased sepsis, decreased anemia, decreased blood transfusions. This is not rocket science. This is fundamentally important. And that is why, in 2010, David Hutchin, who has been enormous in this drive forward for optimal cord clamping, convened a meeting where there was consultants, and we realised that one of the biggest obstacles to optimal cord clamping was going to be compromised babies, the ones that I've just described, who receives them, the obstetrician and the paediatrician, and to try and persuade people to keep this cord intact when the baby needs resuscitation was going to be nearly impossible. So we devised a mini resuscitator called the Life Start. Well, it was initially the Basics trolley, but then it became the Life Start trolley. And that that's a small resuscitator that enables the cord to remain intact whilst the baby's being resuscitated. And that is actually in use in units across the UK and abroad. There's been big research trial being done in San Diego on the Basics trolley, and they said that it has saved lives, because a baby that gets the full blood content is easier to resuscitate than a baby that's hypovolemic.
Wow. Amanda, I'd just like to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been really, really informative, and also for your contributions, like, the trolley, and for spreading this information around. I mean, it might make all the world of difference to so many young people who are being born from now on. And I was just wondering if there was anything else that you were keen to express before we wrap up.
I think it's just the informed choice, and people spreading, if somebody listens to this and just thinks, gosh, if there's a really, this isn't rocket science, it's really, really important to spread the word. You might get somebody that comes from a different country, and to go back to their country and group with other people to try and spread this. Ulla Anderson, who's one of the top researchers, said that we're all pushing a snowball. And it doesn't matter whether we're a top researcher, whether we're a parent, a doula, a midwife, or doctor. We're all pushing this snowball, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And we have to roll it out globally. You know, and there's lots of very determined people working in different countries, and we network because we do need support. Raising your head above the parapet and trying to change practice, even though this is evidence-based, it's really quite difficult. There's a lot of people that resist it because they always think that nobody likes to change practice. So it is very important, especially when you've got companies across the world that are trying to get hold of this very important cord blood.
For sure.
Yeah. And everybody needs to work together.
Well, hopefully we've collaborated well together today.
We have.
And
yeah.
Where can people get your critical details if they want to follow your work or get in touch with you or anything like that? Where can they find you?
I have my Facebook page, which is, I'm on Twitter, and my Twitter name, of course, is @OptimalClamping. And I have a Facebook page, which is Optimal Cord Clamping, stroke full blood benefit, but we might be adding weight for white into that. And I receive a lot of communication via email, and I do get back to people. It might take me a few days, depending on what's going on, but I will answer queries. But the Facebook page has actually become quite interactive, really, and we have a lot of people having babies, getting advice, having babies, and then telling their stories on Facebook, and that makes it really quite interactive. And that's I co-share that now with another midwife in Australia. So we're working, globally. It's a good team.
Lovely, thank you. And I will put any links you asked me to in the description of the video, so people can just click at the video description and follow up on that. Thank you for spending this time with me.
My pleasure, Anthony, and thank you for asking me.